we were walking in Regent's Park in London with Srila Prabhupada. And actually it was perhaps the month of October. It was quite cold. And there had been some type of precipitation because the walkway was icy. Prabhupada had on an airline blanket, which he was using to wrap around his waist on top of his dhoti. I'm sure Prabhupada didn't steal the blanket from the airline, but somebody did. In any case, it was a type of striped blanket. I believe it was striped. To get the airline. And there was a wool blanket. And we'd wear that. And it was just Srila Prabhupada and myself walking. And we're walking through the park. Prabhupada was taking a stick, and he would stop and he would smack the puddle which had frozen. Then he would walk on. And then he'd come to the next one and smack it. And it would shatter. And after a while, I guess he was waiting for me to ask him why he was doing that. So I asked him. And Prabhupada said, because this is not the natural condition of the water. He said, similarly, it's not our nature to be in light. We must break that material energy. He said, this is not a natural condition to be in light. And I remember we kept walking, and at one point there was some, I think it was some, he noticed that there was a leg of some type, and it was frozen except for the portion around the tree. And he said the Goswamis knew the secret. That's why they lived under trees. He said because a tree is warm in the winter. Underneath the tree is warm in the winter and cool in the summer. He said you can see that because around the tree the water is not frozen. When we went to India with Srila Prabhupada, 1970, at the time, and leading up to that time, the Sankirtan movement had pretty much just begun, say for a year and a half, meaning active street Sankirtan. And it was done by, chanting Hare Krishna on the streets and distributing that to God in magazines, basically. So when we got to India, we applied the same formula. We started to chant Hare Krishna in the streets. But as soon as we did that, there was some ridicule. People were ridiculing us a bit. And there were some newspaper articles, even. And people somehow were throwing coins towards us. When Prabhupada heard this, especially people were throwing coins, he told us stop immediately doing the daily kirtan on the streets. Because people are taking it cheaply. Then gradually, things turned around a little bit, but it was significant that Prabhupada was willing to adjust completely the most fundamental strategy, of street chanting parties, if it did not have the desired effect. So, a preacher has to be an expert judge of time, place, and circumstance, and know how to present Krishna consciousness in an effective way for the local population. And it may be one formula may be totally unsuitable. And Prabhupada did really know how to decide which formula was suitable to which place. I think that was one of Prabhupada's most outstanding qualities. He wasn't a stereotyped thinker. He used to say, spiritual life is not static, it's ecstatic. There was pun in that word, it's ecstatic. And He was always thinking of, brilliant, unique ways to spread Krishna consciousness. Another time when we were in India, Prabhupada was actually quite upset because some of his, or one godbrother, or some godbrothers were critical of our sannyasis because they didn't speak Sanskrit, or couldn't read Sanskrit. Prabhupada said, where does it say anywhere that one must be able to read Sanskrit to go back to Godhead? Where does it say that? Quite adamant about this. And he said, my disciples may be, it was at the same thing, he said, my disciples may be disqualified in so many ways. He said, but one qualification they had, he was speaking to some Indian people in Vrindavan who were gathered here. He said, but one qualification they have, he said, whatever I tell them to do, they will do. They have full faith in whatever I say. So, I appreciate the point because compared with the gentlemen who were sitting there, there were many gentlemen and saintly persons, we certainly were not qualified in so many ways in terms of etiquette. And Prabhupada in fact said that. He said, I know often they make mistakes in terms of etiquette. He said, but whatever I tell them to do, they will do. So our good fortune was that we were following the Lord's pure devotee. And, despite all disqualifications, that one qualification surpassed every good qualification anyone else might have. He was in Australia on his way back to India, and he sent me a telegram. You preach if Mass, I preach if class. So it's as I described to him about a Pandal program, a large outdoor public program that we were arranging for like 10 days or something. He just, I said, will you do it? Are you willing to do it so we can advertise? And he said, that was the telegram. You preach if Mass, I preach if class. Prabhupada gave Gayatri Mantra. First, I think he did it first in Boston, and then he came to San Francisco and gave some of those Gayatri Mantra. It was September 1968. So, he gave out a sheet with the Gayatri Mantras after teaching us how to chant. Anyway, Jayananda was having some difficulty pronouncing the mantras, so he decided that he should go and ask Srila Prabhupada how to properly pronounce the mantras. So he took me along with him. And we sat down in front of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada told him to go ahead and try to pronounce the mantras. And as Jayananda tried to pronounce the mantras, Prabhupada just leaned back and started roaring with laughter. And Prabhupada just shook his head and said, it's hopeless. He said, but it doesn't matter. He said, because you're so sincere, Krishna will accept it. Krishna will accept your chanting. How Prabhupada is so learned. We're told that Prabhupada, first of all, Prabhupada is an intimate associate of Krishna. So the Dhamma Buddha Yogam Tam, Krishna gives the intelligence to discern the devotee. And I think the first answer is that it's by the grace of Krishna. Prabhupada knew everything because he knew Krishna. He knew exactly when to quote a particular verse that was appropriate at the time. We were also told that Prabhupada did study Bhagavatam during his Grihastha-ashram, for example, for 4 hours every day. I heard this. And I also heard, talking to Prabhupada's son, Vrindavan Chandra, who told me that Prabhupada used to personally worship Radha Krishna deities. He would not only worship the deity in the morning by waking the deity, offering arti, bathing the deity, but he would also cook for the deity personally. And he would also sew the deity's clothing. In other words, he really took care of those deities. Prabhupada, he did many things. I mean, one point is that what we know of Srila Prabhupada, we know from what we saw of him after he came to America, but we don't know everything that happened before that, and we certainly, as Prabhupada said, you were seeing me, but actually, in other words, Prabhupada is how Krishna and he are related is something which, so Prabhupada was able to hear from Krishna everything he needed to know. I think it's not only in his, on the one hand, I'm trying to say that it's both a question of his studying, but at the same time it's also a question of Krishna's revelation to Prabhupada. And I don't think that's one or the other, but it's a combination of both. One time Prabhupada gave me a love dupe. I think I told the story last time, yeah. A love glue. Actually, it wasn't a love glue, it was a love glue, as Prabhupada called it. Anyway, and he asked me what my impression was of the blessing, and I tasted it, and I just couldn't believe the taste. I said, it's not of this world. Prabhupada said, you're right. He said, this is the same recipe that Mother Yasoda cooks for Krishna when he goes out to tend cows, and Krishna likes them so much that he keeps extra in his pockets so that he can eat them throughout the day. When Prabhupada was speaking, it was very clear to me that, it was Mother Yasoda's recipe. And Prabhupada knew it very well. I was with Prabhupada when we made some of the recordings. He made some of the recordings, which are, we listened to bhajans. And it's quite wonderful to watch Prabhupada record. First, he would play the harmonium. And, when I was there, I played the kartals, or if I wasn't, or someone else would, very gently. And try to keep the rhythm, because there was no redundant. Because after he would record the harmonium and the kartals, then he would put on the headphones, and he would listen to the recording and just play the redundant to accompany himself. So a lot of these tapes are Prabhupada playing harmonium and redundant. And Prabhupada was an expert musician. I heard that, I think it's mentioned in terms of the but anyway, it said that when the recording engineer heard the chanting that Prabhupada did on the Happening album, the first Hare Krishna album, the man said it was, Prabhupada was uncanny, that Prabhupada was had perfect pitch. Perfect pitch. And the recording engineer was very, very impressed with Prabhupada's voice. One thing that I always remember is how Prabhupada once laughed at me. I mean, he laughed at me quite a few times, but this is one. We're in Calcutta. We had just arrived. And, I don't know if I mentioned, I'm not playing with this. The whole party was sannyasis, except for myself. At the time, I was a grihastha, and the whole Srila Prabhupada consists of sannyasis. Kirtananda Swami, Madhavisa Swami, Devananda Swami, and Tamal Krishna Das Adhikari. So, I had enlisted myself, we had just formed, Prabhupada had just formed the GBC, and because I was there, I immediately grabbed the zone that I knew Prabhupada was going to. And it was just a smart move to get to be with Prabhupada. Little did I know what it all was all about, GBC, and I didn't know what I was setting myself up for, but it was the right move because of the net. But I had to pay for it. And I started paying as soon as we arrived in Calcutta because Prabhupada instituted the life membership program. And little did I know that, when you keep accounts, it's not really, now it's, but enough that more, it didn't matter what was done. In the program, money started to come in, and someone had to keep the counts, and someone had to keep tabs of who the members were and issue receipts, and print out membership. Every time I try to get someone to help, it's not a sannyasi. I'm a sannyasi. You know, I play the harmonium. Every one of them was doing something. I'm practicing harmonium, but nobody was supposed to do anything. They were sannyasis. This, you know, I stopped crying, but I mean, I was trying to figure out why it was very. For this, he said, we should pray to be so constantly engaged in Krishna service that I cannot find as any means to make it. So this is very fortunate. Then, you know, once he told that story about an Indian train. Said if you've ever driven, I mean, especially if you go on a train in India, like I used to have to go constantly when I would cut a train, and it's packed. And I mean, you know, you have to go to countries like India or China to know what the word packed is like. Maybe South America, they get packed up there.
Governing body commissioner in the Hare Krishna movement here in the United States, and spends a lot of time here in Texas and in Houston. Good to have you here. We appreciate you coming on the show. Tell us something, if you will, a bit, just to form a basis for things, about the history of Krishna and the movement and the religion. Where did it begin? How did it come here?
Well, Krishna is a name in Sanskrit for God. So I guess we have to say that this movement began with God. And traditionally, Krishna is worshipped in India. God is worshipped there in the name of Krishna. And the movement came to the United States in 1965 when my spiritual master, his name is Srila Prabhupada, brought the movement from India on the order of his teacher, and began the movement. It's not, of course, a movement, and sometimes people brand us as a cult, but it's far from that. Our scriptures are 5,000 years old, and it's a very traditional and conservative religion. In fact, in India, it's considered to be the most traditional of all the religions practiced there.
Why did he feel compelled to bring it to the United States?
Well, one who actually has love for God wants to spread it to others. And the beauty about the Krishna consciousness movement is it provides an entire day, hour by hour process of loving and serving God. And the very easy method of developing love for God by chanting Hare Krishna. The essence of the religion is to chant these three words, Hare, Krishna, and Rama, are different names for God, and they purify one. So seeing the religion that has spread all over the world has become very materialistic nowadays. Prabhupada felt that there was a genuine need to bring relief to the people of the world, and he felt that the best way to do this was by broadcasting the chanting of Hare Krishna.
He first established his headquarters in New York.
That's right.
And you are very obviously an American, and I would be willing to wager that you are American. Okay. What you joined in '67, shortly after you arrived. What attracted you to this? What in your life made this seem like a good way to go for you?
Well, in college I had been studying philosophy, and so naturally I was searching for the perfect philosophy or way of life. And actually I joined out in San Francisco, on the West Coast. I went out after college, I went out to the West Coast, and I happened to meet up with some of the devotees of Krishna who invited me to the local temple there. And that was the first time I met Prabhupada, my spiritual master. Of course, when I first heard him speak, I was a little doubtful, to be very honest. I had seen so many spiritualists and leaders, and I felt many of them were a little bit cheating, to be honest.
In what sense?
In the sense that they said so many nice things, but they often didn't practice what they preached. And so I made a very close study, first of all about his teachings, and secondly about his personal lifestyle and the lifestyle of the other devotees there. Then I became a little bit convinced.
It is, from what I read, a strict religion. And I understand there are four basic principles that you have to follow.
I want to make a statement here to say that that doesn't mean that all of our congregational members follow these 4 principles. But in order to be an initiated devotee and, say, a minister of our religion, you have to follow 4 rules. No meat eating or fish or eggs. No,
I was curious to know why eggs were included in that.
well, they have the potential for...
To become live.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no meat, fish, or eggs, no gambling, no intoxication, and in fact...
that includes coffee.
That's right.
Coffee, tea.
And cigarettes also.
Okay.
And no illicit sex, which means no sex outside of marriage, and even within marriage for the purpose of procreating children.
What is the chanting for? It can sound to someone outside quite relentless, and quite monotonous.
Well, one point is that I would say that if anybody tried to chant any word, let's say coffee, 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 you get pretty sick of it after a while, and you wouldn't get your thirst quenched. But somehow or other, we're able to chant Hare Krishna throughout the day, throughout our lives, and not get tired. In fact, we relish it more and more. And this is because we actually understand that the name of God and God are non-different. In other words, God is present within His holy name. Krishna is one of the holy names of God. We don't say it's the only name. So we find that by vibrating God's holy name, we feel ourselves in contact with God. And naturally we feel ecstatic about that.
Do you actively go out and seek converts? I mean, I would gather you believe in proselytizing your religion.
Yes, we do. But we don't force people, of course. In other words, this is something which someone's going to have to be convinced by their reason and intelligence, not by blind faith.
How does the religion keep going? Is your main source of funds soliciting on the streets, selling the information in the books and so forth?
No. Book sales is one of our sources of income.
That's not where most of us have encountered members of your religion.
Right. Book selling is one of our major preaching activities, but the largest part of our income comes from our congregational members who support our movement.
So we should make this clear. We were talking about this before the show. People that belong to the Krishna religion do not have to dress as you are dressed, do not have to live in the temple, etc.
No, most of them don't. Most of them practice Krishna consciousness in their own home. They chant Hare Krishna at home, they chant Hare Krishna on the way to work. Probably some of your friends are Hare Krishna people. Maybe they just haven't revealed it yet.
Well, they haven't. You're right. We've got to take a break here. We'll be back and talk more about this, and we'll take your questions and comments at 626-2619. So do stay with us. And we are back discussing the religion of Krishna with Guru Dev, as he's asked to be called. It's a lot easier than saying his full name, believe me. So I appreciate it making that easy for me.
I do want to make a distinction, though, between our movement and other movements of the day, which are known as cults. One of the differences is that we base our movement on a very ancient philosophy. You were mentioning that you had heard of this book, the Bhagavad Gita. So this book is it's like the Bible of our religion. It's 5,000 years old.
I'll hold it to that camera there.
So this book is 5,000 years old, and it's not that this religion was made by some cult leader and it's got some dogmatic beliefs. It's a very ancient, respected religion. Most universities, for example, which have East Asian departments, they use our textbooks. We have a publishing wing of our society called the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, which publishes about 80 volumes of these literatures. And they're considered the authoritative texts in this particular field of study. So first of all, to distinguish it from, say, a cult, it's not just some cult leader's philosophy. It's a very ancient, respected, bona fide religious philosophy which precedes Christianity and even Judaism.
You can't appreciate, though, the worries of parents who see their children joining something that is so strange to them, see their children with shaved heads, chanting mantras on the street, selling magazines and so forth, and so on. Surely you can appreciate their concerns, though. their worries.
Yeah, I think that I do appreciate it. I think first of all, what they should do is find out more about our religion and see that it's not something which is so different. Although I would definitely agree in the garb and in the shaved head, it is a little different. The people who join to become full-time ministers, just like the president here of our Houston temple, was a businessman. He was the head of the business here. And since that time, he's given up his business activities and become a full-time minister in charge of our activities here in Houston. He's about 32. His wife is a MA degree holder. She was a social worker. So I think the average age here of our ministers is probably around 27 or 28.
Hello, you're on the air. You got a question?
Yes, I was just wondering if he believed in our God, Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do believe in your God, but I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, as I think he himself said he was. So we believe in both Jesus Christ as the Son of God and also in his Father as God himself. When we say Krishna, we're speaking of God the Father. In other words, we understand Krishna to be the Father of Jesus Christ, and we accept Jesus Christ as the Son of God.
Oh, you do?
Oh, definitely.
That was not an original tenet of the religion, I would imagine. Certainly if it predates Christianity.
No, but in other words, we accepted that Christ came to deliver mankind from their sins, and that he is a chosen Son of God for this purpose.
What reactions have you gotten from mainstream Christianity or Judaism?
Well, people who are open-minded and who are a little bit knowledgeable, they very much appreciate our religion. We have dealings with so many mainstream leaders of religion, and they don't find any contradiction in our teaching. You read the Bhagavad Gita and you read the Bible, and you won't find contradictions.
Okay. We have also heard from former members, and this is your chance to respond to this, that very often medical care is reluctantly given if chanting and prayer do not work.
This is absolutely untrue. We believe firmly that medical treatment is required. In fact, we say that there's three things which should not be neglected: fire, death, and diseases.
Okay.
So here's Houston, it's a big medical complex. I mean, the doctors should not worry that we're going to keep patients away from them. Of course, if one leads a very God-conscious life, the chance of disease is minimized. For example, we very much regulate our diet, and we eat foods. Like now, I think they've come out a lot of research about cancer, perhaps being helped, at least along the way, by meat eating. So there's a lot to be said for a vegetarian diet. So our members do find themselves with a lot less diseases. In that sense, I guess the doctors could worry about our movement. They might.
This might be following up there. Hello, you're on Houston Live. You have a question?
All right. I want to know that feeling of homosexuality, their religion. I never tuned it inside.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't feel that homosexuality is a normal experience. We think that it's an abnormal experience, which is the result of a very confused materialistic civilization. So we don't agree that homosexuality is something which is natural.
Okay. Mine too is ready. All right. Hello, you're on the air. You got a question?
Yes. First of all, I want to say that I'm a Christian.
Okay.
But I have studied with I did live in an ashram for a little while. And I found the lifestyle very quiet, very calm, and very conducive to equity. It's very highly concentrated on God. And while I didn't find it satisfying, this was when I was with them, but they never held me there. They never forced me to do anything. When I left, all I left with was good feelings about the entire experience.
And this was an ashram in the States?
It was an ashram in Denver, Colorado, and I also went to one in New York City.
Part of the Krishna movement.
Right. Yeah. Both of them were in the Krishna movement, and I had been associated with them a couple of times. And I just went and I studied with them. Like I said, I didn't really agree with philosophy, but.
Could I ask you? Could I interrupt for a moment and ask you where you disagreed?
Well,
what did it lack for you?
That's really hard to put my finger on. It's just like asking what the Baptist religion lacked for me. So I'm into the Pentecostal religion now.
Okay.
So it's sort of hard to say, what it will, But, as far as chanting on the beads and everything, what is the difference between chanting Hare Krishna and saying a rosary? Same basic ideal. And the Catholics sure don't mind doing that. So, really, what I'm trying to say is it's a valid religion.
Okay.
And I support him 100%. It's just I don't agree with Sun Yat-sen. Now that is a cult, and that is trying to subvert people. But this is not a subversion. This is a very, very old religion. Millions of people in the world believe in it, and it doesn't have anything to do with any of those other things. That's mainly what I was trying to say.
Okay, we appreciate your call. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got to take a break here. We'll be back. We've got a longer segment, and we'll take more of your calls. So 626-2619. Do call us, and we'll be right back. And we are back with Guru Dave of the Krishna movement. He is, gets the title right, again, the Initiating Spiritual Master and Governing Body Commissioner in Hare Krishna here in the United States. We have hello, you're on here, you got a question? Okay, and in the ceremony, or, okay.
Well, first of all, we don't believe in divorce. So our marriages go for life.
Okay.
And, what kind of marriages?
They're married within the movement. You don't.
Not always. That's an individual's preference. It's a lot easier to marry somebody in the movement.
Are they recognized by law?
Oh, sure.
If a Krishna minister performs the ceremony?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Everything's legal.
Okay. What have members of your group had that experience of marrying someone outside the group? And
yes.
What kind of conflicts does that create?
Strain.
Yeah.
It's a strain. Because look at the kind of lifestyle we lead. We get up at 4 in the morning at least. We chant Hare Krishna for a couple hours a day. We have some strict vegetarian rules about our eating habits. So there's a number of things which would make it pretty hard for someone to live with someone else if they weren't at least pretty favorable to Krishna consciousness.
Okay. Hello, you're on the air. You got a question?
Yeah, I was wanting to know where this name Krishna originated from.
All right, thank you.
Krishna means he who is all attractive. We believe that God is all attractive. He's the most beautiful person. He's the most wealthy, the most knowledgeable, the most famous. He's the strongest. In other words, any quality which you and I may have has to the greatest degree. So he's all attractive. And in Sanskrit, Krishna means he who is all attractive.
Who was the founding father of the religion?
There's no founding father. In other words, Sanskrit says Dharma tu Shakshat Bhagavat Pranitam, which means religion is enunciated by God himself. So the founder is Krishna, God himself.
Who wrote the Bhagavad Gita?
Bhagavad Gita was written down by an incarnation of Krishna. In other words, God not only has his son, like Jesus, to come, or his prophet, like Muhammad, but he himself can come, or he can send an empowered person. And he sent a very empowered person 5,000 years ago by the name of Vyasadeva, who wrote the Vedic literatures, of which the Bhagavad Gita is one of the prominent. These were all put into writing at that time. The reason that they were put into writing is that previous to that, people's memories were sharper, and they didn't have to write it down. Nowadays, if we don't take notes, we're finished.
Yeah, and you consider him to have been someone specifically appointed by...
Yes, he's empowered. He's an incarnation empowered specifically to write down the Vedic literatures.
Okay. Hello, you're on Houston Live. You have a question?
Yes, I want to know what spiritual master, how do you become a spiritual master?
Okay. How do you become a spiritual master?
By becoming a good disciple. In other words, in order to become a spiritual master, you have to very rigidly follow the instructions of your spiritual master. And when he sees that you're fully qualified and that you follow all of his instructions perfectly, then gradually you become empowered to also become a spiritual master.
How long did it take you?
Well, I was serving my spiritual master from 1967 through 1977 when he left this world. So I guess 10 years. But I'm always trying to improve myself and to love Krishna more and more.
Hello, you're on the air. You got a question?
I do. I'd like to respond to the gentleman's statement that his book of doctrine is older than the Bible. One thing I want to make sure that the audience understands, and that this gentleman understands, is that the Holy Scriptures were given directly from God, and that all other religious doctrines and books are derivations and changes from those original scriptures. And if all the other religious systems in the world are based on a system of works, and John 10:6 says in the Bible that Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no man comes to the Father but through me. And I'd like to hear what he gets to the Bible.
Well, you want to learn if you're...
Hang on a second.
I got a response for you. First of all, you should learn what originally the Bible was in Greek, and it says, no man cometh unto the Father except through one as of the Father. Now that's been changed and translated into through me. As far as what you said about works go, we don't believe that a man can approach the kingdom of God through works alone. He has to have the divine mercy of God. As far as your statement about this, the Bible being the oldest book in the world, then you want to go to a comparative religion class in any major university in the world, and they'll tell you that the Vedic literatures predate the Bible by thousands of years.
I would get into a good deal of tolerance.
Yes, we do. I mean, basically what I would say to this type of person is that, all right, now, let's see what you're actually doing. Let's see your lifestyle. Are you devoted to God in your activities? In other words, one of the symptoms of someone actually being a follower of God is that they serve God with their heart and their soul. So I invite everybody to come down to our temple. You know, we have a temple here in Houston, and let them personally observe the lifestyle of the people who live there and see how devoted they are to God.
What is your tolerance level for other religions, for Buddhism, Hindu, Islam, Christianity, Judaism?
We see that all religions, bona fide religions, I would agree with this gentleman, I don't appreciate these cults that have sprung up and call themselves religions, but any genuine religion which is based on bona fide scripture is ultimately bringing someone to the point of love of God. Now we have to see what religion can bring you most quickly and most perfectly to that platform of love of God. And love of God means that you become more attracted to serving God than simply serving your senses. That's why I say that, and that's, well, he's speaking very nicely, but let us see in his own personal life how much he's actually doing everything for God. When if he lights up a cigarette, can he say, I'm doing this for Jesus Christ? I doubt it. He may, I doubt it.
Hello, you're on Houston Live. You have a question?
Yeah, I have a question about the business here.
Okay.
Sounds like a guy that had everything going for him. And then he just quit his job and went to Hare Krishna. Now, what is this man doing to eat and just make a living? Is he just a bum? Eating Hare Krishna and get him food or what?
All right, thank you.
Well, this man works about 19 hours a day to spread, the highest welfare activity of all. I mean, what is the world missing nowadays? There's lots of hospitals, there's lots of schools, there's lots of old age institutions, but look at the newspaper, the world isn't doing too well. So we say that the thing that the world needs the most is, God consciousness. So if someone gives their life to spread God consciousness 18, 19 hours a day, I don't think that that's being a bum. I think that he's doing welfare activities. I don't, just because he could have kept his job, and most businessmen do who join our movement. We don't encourage them to give up their business. But this man was so much, determined in his own heart to want to directly preach that he decided to do that. I mean, a lot of people don't do that. But I think it would be unfair to call him a bum.
Well, certainly, his living, his lodging, etc., is provided though by.
Yeah, and let me explain that the lodging, that our devotees have is really simple. Like I've got 2 sets of clothes. This is one, and the other one is being washed right now.
Okay.
So, and I sleep on a floor, on a mat, on a simple mat. I don't have any bank account personally. I have no personal, savings or of any type. I don't have my own vehicle. I don't own anything except, with this cloth, and someone gave me a watch, and I got my prayer beads. So it's not like we're spending a lot of the public money on ourselves.
Well, and in the sense of fairness, it would have to be stated that ministers and priests and nuns and rabbis are paid by the church as well. I mean, they don't have other jobs as well.
Yeah.
Hello, you're on the air. You got a question?
No, that's not. That's like a creation theory. If it's like Adam and Eve or evolution or what?
Okay, good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, we don't.
The origins of life.
Yeah, well, the origin of life is by creation. God created the universe, the world, etc. If you read the Vedic literatures, you'll see a tremendously detailed explanation about the process of creation. There's theory of relativity is there, about the atoms, about how to calculate time from the movement of atoms. Very scientific information is contained in the Vedas about the entire creation from it's not just a very simplistic description. So I just want to say we don't at all agree with Darwin's theory.
Oh, you don't?
No, we don't agree with Darwin's theory. We understand that there's evolution, but that's an evolution of consciousness. That we believe that the soul transmigrates.
Well, we've talked to fundamental Christians who disagree with Darwin. How do you explain scientific research and findings?
Well, I don't. I mean, there's a lot of books written by Christians. We have our Bhaktivedanta Institute of PhD scientists also. Basically, there's no proof yet about Darwin's theory. It's still a theory. There's so many missing links in the fossil records. I mean, basically, they have never yet substantiated Darwin's theory. We understand that there are many different species of life. According to our scriptures, there's 8,400,000 species. And the soul transmigrates through these different species. In other words, this is not your first birth. Now you have a human form of life. But previously, you may have had a life in so many different types of bodies.
So reincarnation is a
yes, your consciousness is evolving. We believe in evolution of consciousness. And gradually you get a human body, and it's in this body that you can actually get out of the material world and go back to Godhead. Because human life is an opportunity for self-realization.
Okay. Hello, you're on the air. You got a question?
Yes, I'd like to know what happened to I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correct or not, but I believe it's the Guru Maharaj guy, the one who went in the Amsterdam. He was 14 years old at the time, but...
Oh, Maharaji. Yeah.
As far as I know, he started to go to nightclubs with his secretary, and that's the last thing I know about him.
What was his...
He's got no connection whatsoever. The only connection...
A lot of Indian-based religions get jumbled together, don't they?
Yeah, but I think if you study his activity, you'll see,
Was that Krishna, though?
No, not at all. In fact, he called himself Krishna. He says he's God. He's God, you're God, we're all God. You just have to realize it. We don't agree with that at all.
Okay. Hello, you're on the air. You got a question?
Yes, well, I've been really interested in the Hare Krishna movement. And I've noticed that in many pictures that they have a sitar. Is this a kind of a religious instrument or something?
Yes, sitar creates a harmonious atmosphere which is conducive to meditation. Meditation means to think of God. And the perfect meditation is where you can remember God throughout the day. That's why we chant Hare Krishna.
Okay. On that point, we're going to have to leave it. We're out of time. Guru Dave, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Sharing information with us. We'll leave the judgment to you. That's about as good an explanation of it as we can make. Again, thank you for being with us.